Good morning, everyone. I'm Shelley Klein, and on behalf of the generations after, I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a very interesting program for you. The topic is faith after the Holocaust, the impact of the Shoah on survivors and the Jewish people. However, before we get to that topic and our distinguished panel, we would be remiss if we did not commemorate the anniversary of the November pogrom, otherwise known as Kristallnacht. And in order to do that, we have a couple of special things we'd like to present to you. First, we're going to see and hear listen to a poem titled Kristallnacht, and we are honored to have 3 generations of the Cohen family reading the poem to us. Ruth Cohen, the survivor, there you see them on the screen, her daughter Barbara Cohen, and Barbara's daughter Naomi Cohen Fields. First, you will hear the recital of that poem, followed by a recorded musical piece. It's an early version of a Lee that was popular during World War II, and it's being performed by Carl Tretter. So I'd like to turn the screen over to the Cohen family now. Thank you so much. Ruth, please.
From adolescent dreams I wake, no hope for blessed sleep remains. Embracing silence in the dark, I search for light past shuttered panes. But no, my window is secure against this chilly autumn night. I now recall when Mutter came to stroke my brow and lock it tight. Where is the drone of Vater's voice, recounting speeches word for word? Instead, my Mutter's gentle sobs intone her sorrows, yet incurred. I risk a peek despite her plea to stay in bed once I retire. 2 chairs sit empty, forced between the radio and raging fire. But as I ponder this, it comes a vengeful thunder in the street, pounding like 1,000 drums on cobblestones by marching feet. I seek the solace of my bed and pour the bedclothes over my eyes, but angry shouting fills my head amid foul shrieks and pleading cries. The crash of glass is all around. From where it comes, I cannot tell. A wail of sirens soon surrounds and joins a chorus born of hell. No longer can I listen blind. I must know what unfolds outside. With trepidation, I unwind the tepid sheets in which I hide. As I undo the shutter's latch, a raging glow seeps through the chinks. I open perdition's hatch and look beyond. My spirit sinks.
Outside, the world erupts in rage as zealous men and boys my age pursue their vengeance to and fro. A few are strangers, most I know. I hear them crunching down the street on crystal carpets at their feet. Their hate continues to amass the shattered lives among the glass. As men are dragged into the night, their screams invoke perverse delight. Not one is spared or dares resist the blows from rods or doubled fist. A few who watch the cruel reprise betray compassion in their eyes, but fearing those who may deride, they pass by on the other side. I watch the swath of carnage spread beyond the living to the dead, as graves found worthy of disdain are stripped of peace in death's domain. Behind a raging chaos churns, a foreign house of worship burns, adorned with scrolls unfurled in haste of old commandments once embraced. The flames ascend as minutes passed, their glow igniting shards of glass. This morbid beauty pleased my eye, like stars unnumbered in the sky. Then just outside my vision's reach, a voice of reason starts to preach and quotes a treatise, cold and stark, espousing doctrines in the dark. His words go spinning through my head. My conscience balks with icy dread. Which voice will earn my trust again? My childlike faith or tongues of men? No longer can I bear the sight of fates unfolding in the night. I flee the room in which I sleep, collapse in pain, and then I weep.
As daylight stirs my weary mind, I hear the rattle of the door. It is my Vater, out all night, who treads the shadows on the floor. He sighs and sinks into his chair as if enduring tortured loss. He pulls an armband from his coat, emblazoned with a twisted cross. A floorboard creaks, he spins around, and spots me in the light of day. He trembles at my anxious gaze, then drops his eyes and looks away.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Wonderful. I'd like to again thank so much the three generations of the Cohen family, Ruth, Barbara, and Naomi, for your beautiful reading of the poem Kristallnacht by Kent Allen. And many thanks also to Carl Treader for his beautiful musical performance. At the end of the program today, we're going to hold a short membership meeting for the members of Generations After, so please stay with us for that. But now we'll turn to the rest of the program, and it is sadly appropriate to remember the 1938 November pogrom today, as we are in the midst of an ongoing struggle to secure the existence of the state of Israel and the Jewish people after the horrors of October 7th. In that light, our program today is even more relevant than when we planned it months ago. And the discussion today on faith after the Holocaust, the impact of the Shoah on survivors and the Jewish people as a whole, will include three distinguished guests, and it's going to be moderated by Anat Bar Cohen, our former president of the Generations After, and she's also the current secretary of the World Federation of Jewish Holocaust Survivors and Descendants. So I will now turn the program over to Anat. Anat.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, everyone. Bruchim habayim, boker tov, welcome. Good morning to everyone. We're so glad you're here. There is, I believe, none among us this morning whose heart is not in the East. And so we dedicate this program to the spirit and extraordinary courage of our Israeli brothers and sisters and all that they are enduring right now. After the catastrophe of the Shoah, the Jewish world turned its efforts to absorbing the She'arit HaPlita, the remnants of the Jewish people in the ancestral homeland, and with superhuman effort, turned it not only into a haven, but a modern, innovative, technologically progressive, and culturally alive society and center of the Jewish people. The Kishinev or November pogroms would never again happen now that we had the existence of Israel, a Jewish army, and a Jewish government. And yet, on October 7th, we faced the worst slaughter of Jewish people since the Holocaust. So we ask the question, what happened to our faith and our belief since the Holocaust, after the Holocaust? And now we ask the second question, what will happen to our faith and belief after the events of October 7th and what we're enduring right now? Rabbi Shai Held has commented that Holocaust theology ended because the questions won. Along with their own perspectives and areas of expertise, each of the speakers today will grapple with these essential questions, and we'll see if the questions will win. We have this morning 3 excellent thinkers, philosophers, teachers, rabbis, professor of Jewish history, religion, and the Holocaust, who will ponder these questions with us and with each other. Rabbi Reeve Brenner is the author of Faith and Doubt of Holocaust Survivors, in which he interviewed hundreds of survivors in the 1970s and gathered invaluable information on survivors' faith before, during, and after the Shoah. His newest book is Victim Blaming, Blaming Victims and Holocaust Thinking in Crisis. Professor Gershon Greenberg is a pioneer in the field of Jewish religious thought through the Shoah and is director of the Advanced Research Seminar on the Religious Dimensions of the Holocaust at the Hebrew University. He has been for the past 4 decades visiting professor in Holocaust religious thought at Bar-Ilan University and has published hundreds of articles and books. And his forthcoming book is To Rescue History, Real-Time Orthodox Responses to the Holocaust. He's based at American University, where he was founder and the first director of the Jewish Studies program. Rabbi Barry Cytron was a congregational rabbi for 24 years and then director of the J. Phillips Center for Jewish Christian Learning at St. Thomas University and was a professor of religion and chaplain at Macalester University in Minnesota. With Earl Schwartz, he co-authored When Life is on the Balance and Who Renews Creation on ethical Jewish teachings. He was consultant to the traveling art exhibit Envisioning Evil, the Nazi drawings of Mauricio Lanzansky, to which he wrote a chapter for the catalog on Jewish-Christian relations in the aftermath of the Shoah. We have a fascinating hour ahead of us. Please write your questions, and I'm sure you will have them, in the chat, and we'll address as many as we can at the end of the program. I applaud our 3 speakers because we have given them the impossible task of addressing these difficult questions in very short amount of time. They each have 8 to 10 minutes. So thank you so much for adhering to those very difficult parameters. And I'd like to start, number 1, with Rabbi Brenner for his unique and timely discussion on his study on faith among Holocaust survivors before, during, and after the Shoah. Please unmute and thank you, Rabbi Brenner.
Thank you for having me. I'm all shot up with jabs in my arms yesterday, and I hope that I'm coherent for today. So I call this treatise 7 Theological Questions, appropriated from my research for the Faith and Doubt of Holocaust Survivors. Shameless plug to follow. It is a sociological survey conducted in Israel, as you heard, in the 1970s, over 9 years without a computer, which makes me a genuine hero. Inasmuch as I'm the first to present, I might make some sense with this observation. And it's a kind of summing up. There are and always have been a number of Judaisms in the plural. The Judaisms today do not fundamentally resemble each other, much less correspond theologically, and none of the Judaisms of today conform to the Judaisms of the past. What with women and gay rabbis, they are our fast face of our latest post-Holocaust Judaism. Admittedly, the trappings are similar. Our fundamentals, such as the Tanakh, the Mishnah, the Talmud, and Jewish thinkers thereafter. In my early rabbinate, Reform was emphasizing the Nevi'im, the prophets, the conservative movement, the Gemara, and the Orthodox, the codes. This at a time during my early rabbinate, all quite different today with women, rabbis, gay weddings, and so forth. For my research on how survivors were changed religiously by the Holocaust, I was inspired by the sense of urgency such that the Holocaust generation must be reached as soon as possible before so many would be gone. We owed them the endeavor to know them well as persons, one and all, with respect and admiration. And I also make the case that a scientific sociological survey would inform our understanding of the content of Judaism for that generation of survivors and for post-Holocaust Judaism as well. I'll add, Richard Rubenstein and Elie Wiesel were among those who thought so, reviewing my own book, however much they disagreed with each other on the meaning of the Shoah. Now, historians of the Holocaust have well documented what happened to the Jews. My own book, entitled Foreshadowing the Shoah, is one such. However, in this context, my interest was and is what happened to Judaism. And over the course of 9 years, I tracked 700 plus survivors, tracing beliefs and practices over 4 identifiable stages. I asked, what did you believe and what did you practice before the Holocaust? What did you believe during the Holocaust, not practices? Immediately thereafter, and then 3 decades later, living in Israel, how have your beliefs and practices changed and why? I compartmentalized and made distinctions between behavior, that is the practice, the mitzvah system, and the beliefs, that is theological formulations, the familiar theological elements of Jewish doctrines, Messiah, Torah, revelation, chosenness, God, whether personal or impersonal. More about these presently. And lastly, my research concluded with 7 arbitrary multiple choice theological contentions, about which more in a minute. Well, in this book, there are obviously tables, important statistics. I'm going to quote one such from my book, so you walk away at least with some bottom line thinking, although each reviewer had their own understanding of what is the bottom line. Anyway, this is what I write. Our survey discloses that in the matter of religious faith, as in the matter of religious observances, it may be reasonably argued that a striking number of survivors were in fact inspired toward religion by the Holocaust. 5% of all survivors were transformed into believers, seemingly an insignificant figure. However, when one examines the ratios of survivors who were changed religiously directly by the Holocaust, quite another perspective is revealed. Listen to this. Now I put this in italics. Of all survivors changed religiously by the Holocaust, 75% became atheists and 25% became believers. So 3 out of every 4 survivors whose beliefs were radically altered by the Holocaust lost faith, not surprisingly. But unpredictably, nearly 1 of every 4 religiously transformed survivors began to believe in God because of the Holocaust. Moreover, if 16% of all survivors specifically attributed to the Holocaust their loss of faith, and 5% gained faith in God, then overall, the net loss of faith among all survivors, if you need a statistics, came to 11%. All right. I'm going to cite one such individual. He says, I'm writing a book about how I became converted to Judaism in Buchenwald. It's not an entirely unfamiliar story, he says. I was nothing before being sent to the camps, an atheist, a non-believer, a cynic, and skeptical about religion. But it didn't take long before I found myself strongly believing in God and convinced of his presence. And very soon I was moved to praying to God to deliver me from a hell that I was in, and he did. So, in my research, I saw the necessity of studying the religious behavior of survivors, meaning the mitzvot, the commandments, such as keeping the dietary laws, tefillin, sit, and so forth, tracking observances over time, which gained, which lost, and also beliefs. So I reviewed the beliefs held and not held. Good example, bodily resurrection as an example of beliefs of a Jewish belief does not statistically hold up. We're not a people that has a belief in bodily resurrection. As well as others that I reviewed, doctrinal beliefs such as Torah is the word of God, Jews are the chosen people, Judaism is a true religion, the coming of the Messiah, catastrophes like the Holocaust are the will of God. Now, my findings, to no one's surprise, follows. Clearly, we Jews are not united by beliefs or by articles of faith or by doctrine or what you think about God. Rather, we are, in truth, a people, a tribe, an extended family regardless of belief. Last month's pogrom demonstrated again that we Jews are a belonging and a behaving, not a believing community, a folk, not a faith. And I'd add a history people, not a theology people. And for Jews, identity, not ideology, prevails. And we may add sermonically, we admire faith, but it's doubt that gets us in education. I get preachy sometimes. So I now ask on behalf of the Jewish cloud, how might the next generation answer these questions? I'm going to jump to one. I'm going to jump to the last because I don't have much time. But let me end with these questions thrown out to you. One of the 7 questions was formulated as follows. I wish I had the answers that you can all provide out there to me, but here's what goes. With regard to the destruction of the 6 million, which of these responses is the most acceptable to you? Now, these are, remember, theological responses. 1, it's inappropriate to blame God for the acts of man. Man may decide to kill or not to kill. And I got 25% said that's the appropriate answer. B, that was A. B, it's not for us to judge the ways of God. 35%. C, God was unable to prevent the destruction. Imagine that. 5%. The Holocaust was the will of God. It was part of his divine plan. 10%. Good God. And nothing can excuse God for not having saved them. 25%. And the last question, finally, is the following one. The 6 million were destroyed not because of sin, but only because of man's relationship to man with no connection whatever to God. 72%. The 6 million who were destroyed were sinners and were punished for their sins. Otherwise, God would not have allowed them to die. 2%. Soloveitchik is well known for just this position. I consider him one of those like the Apostle Paul and Charles Darwin and Soloveitchik as having misled so many generations. Forgive me for that aside. And the two last choices were the 6 million were destroyed because the entire Jewish people sinned and they were the sacrifice. That's the theology of Ignaz Maybaum. There are theologians thinking that way. And finally, the 6 million were destroyed because of the sins of the entire world, and God chose them as a sacrifice. 10% feel this way. If I have another minute, I'm going to conclude.
We're running out of time, Rabbi Brenner.
All right. Another minute or not?
No.
No. All right. Thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate it. If we can come back to some other questions, especially the one, was Israel worth it in the eyes of Holocaust survivors? Thanks so much for letting me participate in this.
Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Brenner. You've given us an awful lot to think about, and those questions, I hope the audience is pondering those and will send in their responses. We now turn to Professor Greenberg and your analysis of the classic picture of faith among the observant in the face of the Shoah and the journey that has taken us. Professor Greenberg.
This is from my beloved wife, Erika Zichrono Livracha, a child survivor of the Holocaust. Faith is of hope, while hope brings the future into the present. Together, they find expression in prayer and theology. Prayer and theology were there for the people of Israel at Kristallnacht, the Holocaust, its aftermath, and in the present day. Kristallnacht. In his 20 November 1938 prayer and intercession for the Jews of Germany, England's chief rabbi Joseph Hertz prayed, "With a broken, oppressed, and afflicted heart we stand before you, old people and children, as birds wandering and searching for bread when there was none, lost upon the back of the wind with knapsacks placed on our shoulders, fathers separated from children. Please, God, hearken from the place in which you dwell to the place of our weeping." Rabbi Hertz did not protest against God for the troubles. He addressed the God who was covenantally obliged to interact with his people on the stage of history with favor, the God who, quote, would not reject or destroy his people. And the theological response to the Holocaust? In Vilnius, in the hours following the Kristallnacht, Rabbi Chaim Moshe Brzezinski, in pain over the plight of Jews expelled from Germany, stranded in the freezing cold on the Polish border, wrote that while Jews could do nothing to dissipate the rage of the enemy, they could and must turn to God in teshuvah, repentance, feel each other's pain, and plead to God for salvation. And this would change reality for the better. Across the globe, in Atlanta, Georgia, Tobias Geffen explained in his 19 November Chaye Sarah sermon that after Ephron reneged on his promise to Abraham to gift land for Sarah's burial and demanded 400 shekalim, he became a leper. Hitler, who fined the victims $400 million for the Kristallnacht destruction, would likewise be driven into isolation. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Geffen stated, already started the process. Hitler identified all Jews as the same as one entity And now Jews themselves should unify, overcome their differences, console one another, and give charity, and God would end their captivity. The Holocaust. Thus God remained with Israel through the 9-10 November pogrom, but then came the Holocaust. The God who was to interact with Israel in time and space events was gone. Eliezer Schwein of Jerusalem, the leading historian of Jewish thought of the 20th century, writes in his Sidur Tefillah, Philosophy, Poetry, and Mystery, that the neshama, the soul breath, was the source of prayer. At creation, he explains, God's spirit, the ruach, entered Adam's nefesh, his nutritive soul, to bring the neshama to life, and it bonded with God. The bond came to expression in the human, the I, thou, God dialogue, individually and collectively in Israel's historical existence. Original prayers of the camps and ghettos of the Holocaust erupted in voices which shattered God's covenantal relationship to historical events. In the Wadowice ghetto near Krakow, Manya Bader prayed, "Why did you create us? To suffer? To decree our lives to abandon, to be unworthy for you to look upon us with mercy?" But then, from out of her neshama, she declared, "If so, then help us, because of our inner faith in you, which is the foundation of our existence." In the Gross-Rosen subcamp, an anonymous Hungarian woman prayed, "Why do you have us suffer? Why punish the very nation which recognizes no God but you? Is there no compassion in your heart? At least not let our souls be our sin offerings. Please end our suffering and take our lives." But then, as if forced out of her neshama, "Wait, I am humble, and ask only to live, and to live for your sake." As to Holocaust theology, as I documented in Wrestling with God, Jewish theological responses to the Holocaust, wartime thinkers across the globe realized that there were no precedents for what was happening, and therefore no language with which to explain, and they fell into silence. To speak at all would drive one insane. Elchanan Wasserman said that in Baranovich, Poland. Wait for redemption to understand. So said Shlomo Zalman Ehrenreich in Shimliel, Sylvania, Transylvania. Be silent as Aharon upon the inexplicable immolation of his sons Nadav and Abihu at the temple's altar, said Yechiel Meah Morgenstern in London. But the silence quickly became a threshold through which to apprehend God's presence outside the boundaries of earthly time and space. When Yechezkel Sarna rose to speak to the Musa Yeshiva world in Jerusalem in November 1944, he became frozen in silence until it entered his memory that God cried at the destruction of the ancient temples. This led Rabbi Sarna cry, and the tears moved his lips. Like many others across the Jewish world, he articulated his apperception of a higher drama, one between creation, exile, catastrophic suffering, and then redemption, present to God, but outside of history. Thus, prayers and theology of the Holocaust ushered faith through the years of the catastrophe. God's presence could not be discerned externally, but he was there within the neshama, bonded with man. While everything in history spoke against his presence, Jewish thinkers were, like Abraham in the Akedah in the Ancient of Days, able to apperceive him beyond everything that made sense, where God assured redemption. The aftermath. In 1948, when the Jewish state was established, Chief Ashkenazi Rabbi Isaac Herzog and Chief Sephardic Rabbi Ben-Zion Uziel composed this prayer. Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzemichat Geulateinu. God bless the state of Israel, the beginning of the planting of redemption. Meanwhile, and then especially after the 1967 war, Jewish theologians spoke about God's return to history. In Toronto, Emil Fackenheim heralded the mending of the world, Tikkun Olam. In Chicago, Eliezer Berkovitz explained that while the covenant had been eclipsed during the Holocaust, faith endured. Why? because the mitzvah of death al Kiddush Hashem remained alive, as if in suspension. With the establishment of the Jewish state, the mitzvah, Berkovitz explained, joined history, awaiting messianic redemption. And in Jerusalem, Tzvi Yehuda Kook identified the Holocaust as a surgical-like procedure, separating the people of Israel from the profane diaspora, for them to go to the land of Israel to enhance the process towards salvation. Interlude. As expressed in prayer and theology, faith was tied to a tension between God and the events of history. At the Kristallnacht, Jews were confident that God remained present and that suffering would ebb. During the Holocaust, while the covenant appeared to be broken, prayer emerged from the neshama within and from the theology after silence, which was anchored in movement above from catastrophe to redemption. After the Holocaust, prayer and theology about messianic salvation became instilled in the historical reality of the Jewish state, and the covenant became vibrant once again. The 7th of October. Hamas's alleged deity ordered a pogrom, which declared, Jews, you have no value. The Jewish state is nothing. Judaism is annihilated. Obliteration is your name. As we await theological thought, the faith of Israel has found its way into expression in prayer. The poet-singer Yehoram Gaon's new version of the prayer for travel, Tfilat HaDerech, is being recited by the IDF. Yehi ratzon lefanecha shetolichenu b'shalom v'ta'amidenu l'shalom v'tatzidenu l'shalom v'tadigenu l'machuz chofatzenu l'chayim u'l'simcha v'lishalom ki el shomea tefillah baruch atah shomea tefillah. May it be your will to lead us, uplift us, and have us reach our desired haven for life and happiness and peace. For you are a God who listens to prayer. Bless you who hears our prayer. A dialogue now springs from the neshama, affirming God's presence in the wake of the pogrom of 7 October 2023, as it once did with the pogrom of 9-10 November 1938. Once God returned to history with the Holy Land of the State of Israel, faith as expressed in the dialogue of prayer would not be moved.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Greenberg. We're going to go on to ask Rabbi Cytron to give us his talk on the contemporary issues that face the younger Jewish community and the role of the Shoah and what it has played in the identity of the Jewish community in post-Shoah society, and how that's playing out today. Rabbi Cytron.
Anat, thank you very much. Thanks very much, both to Anat and to all of you, and it's a great honor to be with all of you. So this is a 30-year-old photo from April 1993. Our nation's capital, just alongside the National Mall, somber weather, suitable to the occasion, Holocaust survivors, donors, politicians, and dignitaries assembled for the official opening of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Here's the front page of the New York Times the next morning. The lower photo features President Bill Clinton in office just 3 months, with Elie Wiesel and Harvey Meyerhoff, who succeeded Wiesel as chairman of the project. This color photo of that moment that accompanied the Meyerhoff obituary from last August. As chairman, Meyerhoff brought the entire effort to heroic conclusion. Now, perhaps the word heroic sounds like it's an overstatement, but this editorial, as you see here in the next slide, supplementing the Times front page, and which munificently salutes the museum's creation, also alludes to the impassioned debate that plagued the 15-year effort begun in 1978 to create a fitting national memorial to the Shoah. In excavating the museum's origins, and Indiana University historian Edward Liventhal's absorbing volume, which I recommend to you, is the most thorough study. He and others uncovered an ethically awkward controversy that threatened to derail the entire project even before fundraising and architectural planning could even be initiated. Was this new center at the heart of the nation's most precious symbolic real estate to focus on the destruction of 2/3 of European Jewry, the spotlight positioned on our people, and Hitler's aim of genocide? Or should the museum broaden its lens, encompassing other ethnic, religious, and communal catastrophes, and further, not just the Jewish and non-Jewish victims of Nazism, but other prey of venal regimes and evil state actors? Is the mission of the museum then, should it aim to memorialize a particular 20th century calamitous moment, or should it devote itself to the larger universe of the globes abused and its star-crossed? In many ways, that debate deeply informs the central question that I was asked to address, namely the place and understanding of the Holocaust among America's Jews today, especially its younger people. Well, thanks to the Pew Research, which has canvassed the American Jewish community twice in the past decade, we can actually make some informed conjectures about that question. So here is one page of the questionnaire, asking respondents to rank order the contours of their Jewish identity. In the words of the survey, how important is of these in what being Jewish means to you? And to quote Rabbi Brenner, yes, I think that question, what does Jewish mean to you, is probably much more responsive to where American Jews are today. So how might you respond? Well, as you see here, in these statistics underlined in red, first in 2013 to the left, and then 7 years later, just a couple of years ago, remembering the Holocaust scores the highest ranking when respondents were asked to signal the component of their Jewish identity, far ahead of more established items like observance of Jewish law or duty to dietary commands, many devoted to established religious ways. Rabbis, congregations, when seeing these numbers, exclaimed as our bubbies and zadies would have said, "Oy, gewalt." Yet, even before the Pew released those surveys, there was ample evidence that the Holocaust had become a crucial element of how American Jews reflected on their sense of self. Books and movies had familiarized many with aspects of the Shoah. Religious life bore its impact, okay? But prayer books began to be changed, in which they introduced new Yiddish into the prayer book, new poetry, a Torah scroll rescued from those destroyed, from those European shuls, was held aloft and heralded in many synagogues, including many colleges, which also received them. Thorough knowledge of the Holocaust might have been lacking, and mostly it was. But emotionally, the Shoah was clearly and profoundly present in American Jews, imprinting itself on our Jewish psyche and our Jewish soul. Attending the Shoah's rising profile in American Jewish identity, rabbis and notable thinkers began to decry that advance. Edna Friedberg, on the Holocaust Museum staff, recently posted a talk entitled, perhaps rhetorically, "Does the Holocaust play an outsized role in contemporary Jewish identity?" In it, she reviews this agonizing debate about the prominence which is given to the Shoah. But what's not clear, neither from the surveys nor from this internal squabble, is precisely what people mean when they turn to the Shoah as a primary marker of their character. More recent studies, however, I think may offer an intriguing potential answer, especially when it comes to the young American Jews that we may know. So casting an exhaustive net over the diverse ways in which the Holocaust years now suffuse today's global culture, these authors document the transformative way that the Holocaust, both as word and event, is understood today. First and foremost, to be sure, it signals the attempted genocide of our people, but significantly, also something more. It now stands, as you can see at the top of this slide, as the universal symbol of radical human evil. Thoroughly absorbed today in today's vocabulary of human rights work and justice activism, the Holocaust is cited continuously as advocates seek to address and redress sustained outbreaks of hatred and bestial slaughter. The 1947 Nuremberg Code on Medical Ethics, you can see in the middle here, the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights were direct, immediate, world-spanning responses to the Holocaust. In the years that followed, African intellectuals would point to the Shoah in appealing for justice and reparations. In Rwanda, the War Crimes Tribunal harked back to the loss of the 6 million as it set to communal repair. The major Argentinian Human Rights Declaration is entitled Nunca Más, Never Again. We in the Jewish community do not always welcome such historical allusions, and indeed, many reject those linkages, but they continue to proliferate. So here's the way Yale scholar Jeffrey Alexander says it in opening this important book and that headlines the volume. Here's how he says it. How did a specific and situated historical event, an event marked by ethnic and racial hatred, violence, and war, become transformed into a generalized symbol of human suffering and moral evil, a universalized symbol whose very existence has created historically unprecedented opportunities for ethnic, racial, and religious justice, for mutual recognition, and for global conflicts to become regulated in a more civil way? That's his question that opens this book, which is really a debate, as you can see in the title of the book, Remembering the Holocaust, a Debate. This understanding of the Holocaust especially resonates with other data in that Pew study of us, and my own experience from 30 years on the college campus. Pioneering efforts that our Jewish people have done to help young people confront the Shoah, from college courses to summer camps, from Birthright to March of the Living, have had significant influence in shaping how so many today apprehend human rights abuses and attempts at genocide, not only directed at our people, but across the globe too, at other ostracized communities. And there's little question, I think, that the horrific events of October the 7th in Israel, linked as they were, and you can see in this slide from the Holocaust Museum, instantly linked to the Shoah, which saw a shocking rise as well in anti-Semitic rhetoric and acts, stands to alter perhaps indelibly how world Jewry sees its place in the 21st century. For many of our most committed young people, the Holocaust, in both its particularistic Jewish and personal meanings, and also in its more global universalistic perspective, is likely to be a bedrock of our identity in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Cytron. That's an awful lot to process, and I hope that all of you will be asking questions in the chat based on Rabbi Cytron's provocative presentation. I'm going to take the prerogative of the moderator to ask the first question, and then ask Susan Evjian to ask some of the questions that have been sent in through the chat. So first of all, could each of you unmute, each of you speakers, could each of you comment on how the lessons learned from the Shoah regarding how faith helped or didn't help people, how that might play a role in the tragedy the Jewish people are currently going through? Are there lessons to be learned here? Rabbi Brenner, do you want to start?
Well, the question is what did I walk away with primarily in connection with faith after the Holocaust? Rephrase the question so I could maybe get my
Is there
hands on
something that we have learned from the Holocaust, from our experiences in the Holocaust, about our faith that can help us or illuminate what we are going through today?
I think faith was not up to the task, but peoplehood and folk and the singular feelings of extended family is what came out of the Shoah. And all our feeble attempts at theology and justification remain feeble. Important, we should be looking at this, but there's been no response theologically to the Holocaust that rings as being, let's say, convincing. My new book, as I mentioned, you mentioned, thank you for it, is A Victim Blaming and Blameless Victims, Holocaust Thinking in Crisis. I think we need new theologies. And not it won't happen in my lifetime. I'm nearly 90, but hopefully some theologians will emerge and we will benefit from some new thinking. We're an old people. It's true, the Jewish people, but in the space of time, we've got plenty to go. So I'm waiting for some new theologian to step forward. It's not going to be Buber, it's not going to be Borowitz, and it's not going to be the theologians we've become accustomed to, I'm afraid. It's got to be found somewhere else. We're not there yet. When we get another 50 years from now, perhaps it'll formulate in a way that we can say it's the new Judaism. As I said from the beginning, Judaism in the plural. One day we'll have another one.
Okay, thank you so much. I think your comment about identity and our feelings of peoplehood and a tribal sense rings true, certainly, of what's going on in Israel today and around the world in the Jewish communities. Rabbi Cytron?
Yeah, I'm very much supportive of Rabbi Brenner's comment about theology. I think theology has not helped us, despite all of the after Auschwitz theologians, from Richard Rubenstein even to Emil Fackenheim, whose very powerful kind of 600, his additional commandment, I don't think has rescued faith. And indeed, the Pew study and every study today indicates that religion, faith, is much less important than what Rabbi Brenner has emphasized, and not what you just did, which is identity. How one feels about being Jewish is much more important today than the niceties of theology. And I think that that's true. What that means going forward, I think I can only say personally that my own witnessing of what has happened in the Jewish community since October the 7th is quite remarkable, about people finding themselves and saying, something happened to me on October the 7th that I didn't realize. And I think that's a fact that many of us around this table today, all of us listening to, might be able to attest. I know I can.
Thank you. Yes, I surely agree with you, but I think there is a bright line that actually emerged on October 7th or October 8th within the Jewish community, where a segment of the Jewish community remains self-hating Jews and, it is not finding that sense of identity with the group, but many have, and many are, and that's very encouraging. Professor Greenberg.
I really hesitate to answer because maybe I shouldn't. Because I find it hard to begin. But anyway, let me say that faith and peoplehood don't exclude one another. They're related dialectically. It's the people who support faith and the faith who support the people. There's not a conservative Jew who doesn't use a siddur, nor a Reformed Jew who doesn't use a siddur. And the siddur, of course, is a distillation and condensation of faith and theology. And the second point is that, look, we have to face the fact that the branches of Judaism which are developing now and are explosive are the ones which are of faith. I mean, if you want to talk sociologically, then look at the numbers of conservative Jews versus Reformed Jews vis-a-vis the explosion of Hasidic Judaism and of Orthodox Judaism. And we're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of people in the land of Israel who are people of faith and of theology. And we can't look at this from the perspective of American reform or conservatism. We're a world entity. Next point. Look, what everyone says today about theology, the fact of the matter is that there were hundreds, I underline that, hundreds of theological thinkers during the Holocaust itself. I repeat, hundreds. And they were around the world. They were in the ghettos and the camps. And these theological issues are the ones which enabled them to survive. And because they had this faith and these theological issues as sources of survival, they provided the source for people to survive. And why you have, for example, the phenomenon in the DP camps that after the first 2 weeks, when people only wanted to eat, religion just burst forth. And the source for that was from within the Holocaust. Now to the question as to what we can learn today. Look, the Kristallnacht, which we are in the midst of, was a pogrom. And today we have a pogrom. We don't have the Holocaust today. And there are some similarities, but we shouldn't put them in the same basket, so to speak. Now, what happened during Kristallnacht, what we could learn from Kristallnacht, therefore, is as follows. It's quite incredible that right in the hours after Kristallnacht, not in Germany itself, because things were too catastrophic, but in England, in the land of Israel, and as I pointed out, in Atlanta, Georgia, people were finding their way through prayer and theology to respond to it. What is happening today is as follows. There is prayer. I cited one, and it comes, by the way, from a secular thinker, one of the most popular singer poets in Israel, Yero Gaon, who had transformed the Tefillat HaDerech in order to say how looking to God in the military campaign. You could see pictures now, it's quite astonishing, of soldiers having arcs on their backs and carrying the Sefer Torah into battle. The synagogues in Israel are praying Matir Asurim. So just as prayer helped Jews through through Kristallnacht, prayer is now guiding Jews, the people of Israel through the Holocaust. And they could do that with some confidence because God is for them present in the land of Israel, one way or the other. As to theology, we have to wait. So far, no one's started to speculate of how we could integrate this moment, this pogrom, into theology. So I would say, you asked me the question. I hesitate to answer because I'm setting aside 100% what the two rabbis said.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So, I think we having lived in Israel many years myself, I have to say that I don't know about theology and faith, but the Tanakh, the songs, the prayers, the expressions, and so on, are integral into all the secular life of Israel. So when you see some of this, it has to be understood within the Israeli context that we live and breathe Hebrew and phrases and songs and parts of the tefillah. You can hear them on the popular radio. So I just wanted to give that perspective and context of why you might see what looks somewhat religious in secular life is part of Israeli culture.
But there's no division. The point is that religion and secularity in the land of Israel are integrated. And
they're integrated much more so than here. Yeah, the Haredim wouldn't agree with you, but yes.
They would.
All right. Well, I think we have. Oh, I'm sorry, Rabbi Cytron.
And I would just say, and I don't know where. I would just say that religion is an incredibly potent force. And what we're witnessing now in the Middle East is the contention and two messianisms, which historians deeply worried about and were very concerned that rival messianisms would have disastrous effects. And I would say one of the things which we need to be careful about is the way in which both our victimology, and a great Jewish historian named Salo Baron warned us about always thinking about things that will cause us to fear our victim and to think about our tears. I mean, a very important paper that he issued almost 100 years ago. And messianism, which historians also worried very much about, it has taken hold both in Israel and certainly in Hamas. And those ideologies are very dangerous today in what potentially could happen. I think
shows you how powerful they are.
Very, very powerful.
Very powerful. But we're also okay. I'm going to turn to Susan to get some of the questions that were put into the chat.
Okay. Thank you so much for this most provocative and thank you so much for this most provocative and intriguing all the information that's been provided. We probably don't have all the time that we had initially planned for questions. I'm going to combine two that were from Rachel and Anita to start. And that is, in the research that you found in the differences in beliefs regarding faith and the Holocaust, did you find differences, or was it looked at in Sephardic versus Ashkenazi Jews? And was there a distinction between those who had parents who were survivors and those who didn't have this heritage?
You're addressing that question to me, are you?
To whoever.
But
Well,
Yeah.
I questioned survivors, not their children, and the survivors had to be over the age of 13 to be qualified for my survey, and the statistics in the tables bear witness to what transpired. Are you thinking anything specifically? I know I want to answer one question which was asked. What do you respond to the fact that the observant Jews of the world were more likely obliterated than American Jews and the kibbutznikim and the secular Jews? And I can remember how the Holocaust survivors more than once would parody and make fun of it and would say things like God, he was a good God, but his aim was bad. He targeted the wrong set of Jews. What lesson do you get out of the fact that the observant Jews were obliterated and the kibbutznik Jews survived? These are the kinds of questions that Soloveitchik tried to answer by saying that these European Jews who were obliterated were sinful. That's the problem. That's what he believed in. And to my mind, that's, how should we say it? it's a kind of thinking that we have to try to resist.
Shireen says, and I think this has been part of the discussion, though, her cousin and her parents who were survivors and moved from the camp to the U.S. and then to Tel Aviv, asked, who do we pray to? Can there be a God to pray to? I think this is what this discussion has been about the different facets of faith. How do you respond to a question like that? And open to any of the panelists who would like to respond.
So maybe phrase the question a little bit more precisely.
This is the question that was asked, so I'm not sure. Basically, how I read it is, for those who are questioning a God based on the Shoah, based on now, 10/7, how do you answer someone that says, how can there be a God that would do this?
No, I think the answer actually has to come from Rabbi Greenberg, who has investigated and looked at the Orthodox. I would say that we've seen lots of reactions to the Holocaust. I don't think it's way too early to see what the theological reactions, mostly what we've seen today, are communal social reactions. The March on Washington that's going to happen this coming Tuesday is a communal societal reaction based, I think, on identity, not on theology. I don't know where American Jews are theologically, but where they are in terms of their identity, where they are in terms of their commitment to the people of Israel, it will be very clear, I think, on Tuesday when a couple of 100,000 people march on the National Mall.
And
Professor Greenberg, do you have any comment to that?
Yeah, first let me make something absolutely clear. I'm not a rabbi.
No, Professor.
So I'm not answering any of this as a rabbi. I simply look at the sources and, report what I find in there. Look, the question about how can there be a God after the Holocaust is a question which, in a way, the word is relevant. And I'll tell you why. There were hundreds of thousands of people who believed in God during the Holocaust. So belief in God during the Holocaust was simply a fact. So belief in God did continue to it. When you look at I'm researching now prayers which were original prayers written in the camps and in the ghettos, and let alone the sermons that were given, let alone the observance. If you study the use of tefillin, the observance of holidays in the camps and the ghettos and the world, around it, you will see that the belief in God actually did survive. Now, if you want to ask the question about how could God survive? How can there be a God after the Holocaust? Well, maybe that's your question, but the answer is de facto there was this belief in God. The problem is that we have only begun, to unleash all the sources. But as we unleash the sources, this question will become less and less important. Perhaps, but from the historical point of view, the idea of how can you believe in God after the Holocaust, from the historical thing, it doesn't count. It's a rabbinical question if you want to ask for yourself. But, there is, I could offer you one little thing. Anyone who's asking, how can I believe in God after the Holocaust, still believes in God, because otherwise, why would they be asking?
Yeah, it's the perennial dilemma. I think that we've actually run out of time. I'm sad to say, because I think we could go on for another hour.
Just wanted to add to one thing, that the Jews who survived will tell you that their colleagues, friends, and fellow inmates who were believers and faithful died more than the doubt skeptics, and they're aware of how faith did not help them during the camps.
This has nothing to do with that, really. It has to do with how Jews looked, and they were identified as being religious, so they were the target.
Right.
But you just
They were the target.
yes, they were the target because they had nothing to do with how they believed. I mean, to make the point that because they believed more, they were slaughtered more. Please.
They had less of a chance to survive more. That's the problem. They did not take the actions required to survive more than the non-believers.
That's
that
factually
we know.
wrong.
All right,
No,
we're gonna have to stop the conversation at this point, and it just shows how important this topic was, and I cannot thank you all enough. You've given us more than our fill for a Sunday morning to think about this important question, and this question is going to accompany us for the rest of our days. So we'll be thinking about all the things you told us and all the questions that you raised, and I'm hoping the questions won't win out, but I think in Jewish life, we're always left with more questions. So thank you all for your participation, and I'm going to turn this over to Shelley to continue the next part of the program.
Thank you, Anat. Thank you for moderating, and thank you, all our distinguished participants. This was kind of a mind-boggling session for me. I took many notes, lots and lots to think about. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, Susan, too. I'm sorry we didn't have more time for more chat questions. If you were on at the beginning, my name is Shelley Klein, and I am proud to be the current president of the Generations After. Right now, we're going to pivot away from our special program on faith in the Holocaust and turn to the business side of our meeting. And this is our annual meeting. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank all of our board members of all our committees who have worked so hard this year on behalf of our organization, and to all of you for your interest and support. It's been quite a year. More than 1,100 of you receive our monthly e-newsletter with information on our programs, as well as other programs of interest to our community. I just like to highlight some of the programs and events that we've had this past year. It's been a productive year, and highlighted, I think, in particular by our central involvement with the successful conference of the World Federation of Jewish Holocaust Survivors and Descendants, which was held in DC this year, and in which 350 members of the survivor and descendants communities attended from around the country and internationally. Then we had 4 major programs that were held via Zoom. For example, our program Against All Odds, Jewish Women Resistors in the Holocaust, examined this particular little-known chapter in the role of Jewish women in everyday resistance during the Holocaust. And both Israeli and American historians gave their perspectives on that. Then our program on Yiddish, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, that was really popular. That drew over 125 people. And it was aimed at better understanding the history, impact, and current evolution of the Yiddish language and culture, which is alive today, I'm happy to say, although not as much as pre-Shoah, of course. We also, we hope you saw our program on anti-Semitism, The Oldest Hatred, Fighting Back, and that discussed the historical issues of anti-Semitism and ways to fight back as individuals and groups, just something we really need, obviously, right now. Things in our toolkit to help us react, survive, and navigate the waters right now. And the last program before this one was a program on Yisker books, or memorial books, which is kind of fascinating thing that not everybody knows about. These memorial books, the Yisker books, commemorate the various towns, primarily in Eastern Europe, and they also they're a treasure trove of our history. So that was a very interesting program. We also co-sponsored and partnered with other organizations on several programs. For example, we joined 3GDC to honor our survivors on International Survivor Day. And we were a co-sponsor of Shin DC's Congressional Holocaust Commemoration at the Hart Senate Building. And we continue to be active in different ways. We have multiple committees and groups. For example, our book group has celebrated its 11th anniversary this year. And we're now starting to emerge from a Zoom only platform to a hybrid situation. And if you haven't participated in that, if you're a member, please do. It's a wonderful way to meet other Gen After members. And for some people, it's a kind of a springboard to greater participation in the organization. I know that is exactly what happened with me. That's how I started in the group. We have two amazing writing groups that are who are working with a publisher now, actually, on an anthology of the writing group's work. And we hope that anthology will be completed by the end of 2024. So look for information on that. And if you'll allow me to go on just a little bit more, we're proud to serve the Jewish community in other ways. You know, we feel we have a unique perspective and position in the community. One of the things that one of our important programs is our Remember a Child program, which pays meaningful tribute to children who perished during the Shoah before they were able to reach their bar bat mitzvah age. And this program rescues their names and the known facts of their too brief lives, rescues it from oblivion by matching them with someone currently becoming bar bat mitzvah. We also represent our 2Gs on the JCRC Holocaust Commission, which plans the annual area Yom HaShoah commemoration. We're also partnering with JCRC in training and sending out speakers through our Speakers Bureau, which has been very active lately, and quite a few people in training now. Recently, our Vice President, Olympia Sula, represented us at the Golda Meir commemorative event at the Capitol, which was held to mark the 75th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel and the establishment of U.S.-Israel relations. Participants included 12 bipartisan senators and congressmen, as well as various ambassadors based in D.C. And we continue to support our cherished survivors. This year, we contributed $5,000 to the Blue Card, which provides direct financial assistance to survivors in need throughout the U.S. In addition to the various programs and activities, for some of us, there's value just in belonging to a group of individuals for whom the words "never again" are an essential element of who we are, especially now in the wake of the horrific events of October 7th and the ever-escalating rise in anti-Semitism that we unfortunately see around the world. We had already planned to launch an anti-Semitism task force to help us decide the best way our organization can contribute to others, to efforts in fighting anti-Semitism. And obviously that effort seems more important than ever. The task force just held its first meeting last week. If you're a member of Gen After and are interested in joining that effort, please send us an email. You can go to our website and see our email address there. And also, if you're on our mailing list, you should have received an email about the upcoming March for Israel and Against Anti-Semitism that is happening in DC this Tuesday, November 14th. You, I'm sure, have received quite a few announcements from various organizations with invitations to join them at the march. If you would like to join Generation After in that march, we welcome you to do that. We will be gathering at 12 noon at the Federal Triangle in DC. So that was a lot, but it shows that we are doing a lot, and we hope that you have been enjoying our programs and participating with us and continue to do so. We appreciate you so much. And now I'm going to, please allow me to introduce Rachel Miller from our organization, who will end the program. Rachel.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. My name is Rachel Miller, and I'm a member of the program committee. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our extraordinary guests for their contributions to today's timely, significant program. Thank you to the program committee for your hard work in creating this program. Thanks to Ephraim Katzir for his outstanding technical assistance. And we extend our sincere appreciation to you, our very attentive audience, for joining us today. After the program, you will receive a feedback survey, which we hope you will complete to aid us in planning future events. We truly welcome your participation in our organization, so please contact us at generationafterdc@gmail.com to learn how you can get involved. Again, generationafterdc@gmail.com. Thank you.
I think that was a very moving ending to this program.
Agreed, very uplifting.
I agree. Again, thank you all so much.